The Sam Sorbo Show is brought to you in partnership by the Herzog Foundation.
Hi there and welcome. So my next guest is somebody who is really the last person you would expect to challenge the system until her daughter was secretly socially transitioned at school, secretly, without her knowledge. And then she became a fierce mama bear who was recommended to me by a good friend of mine. You're about to hear the story that they don't want you to know. So stay tuned. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Here we go.
Sam Sorbo,
Sam, welcome back to the program.
I'm glad we welcome Sam Sorbo.
It's great to have you here.
All right, welcome back to the program. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. My guest, Lydia McLaughlin, is a courageous mother who uncovered a horrifying truth. And we are hearing this more and more. After years of homeschooling her daughter to protect her innocence, she enrolled her in public school, only to discover that the school was secretly socially transitioning her behind her back. When Lydia told them to stop, they refused. Teachers, administrators, and union leaders colluded to affirm her daughter's new identity in secret, cutting parents out entirely. Lydia fought back and remarkably forced the school to reverse its actions. She's here today to expose the system that betrayed her and also share how love, truth, and relentless persistence brought her daughter back. So this is really an incredible story. And before I bring Lydia in, I want you to take a look at these two clips off of Instagram. The first one, here is Lydia addressing the school board.
We found out that our daughter's teachers at AOC have been calling our daughter by a male name since 9th grade. I'm here to ask you to help me partner with the school to do what's best for my daughter. My daughter's in 10th grade now, but at the beginning of school last year in 9th grade, her mental well-being suffered like many teens coming back from school from the lockdowns. She was like all kids who spent the pandemic lockdown with too much time online, who now think they are trans. I believe we're experiencing a social contagion. My daughter is unique in that she doesn't ask us at home to call her by this other name or pronoun. When she's home and off from school, she's more herself. When we found out what was going on, we requested a meeting with the school principal, Juliet Fine, who has denied meeting with us twice now, once at the beginning of the school year and just last week. She uses the law AB 1266 to refuse meeting with us. I understand the law. What I don't understand is why she won't sit down and listen to us about our daughter, who we feel is just a confused girl growing up in a time where the trend is telling her that she can opt out of her biological sex. Take the gender stuff away and she's just a normal adolescent girl trying to figure out who she is. We're concerned with the secret keeping at school from her caring and concerned parents, and we're kept in the dark and not informed. We just wanted a meeting to voice our concerns affecting her well-being. Isn't it the obligation to meet with parents to partner with us to collaborate what is best for our child? What if it was your child? What can be done for parents who are being denied a meeting with their school principal?
And for the second clip, this is Lydia talking about the harms of the transgender movement in schools. Listen to this.
As a gender nonconforming girl, you call a tomboy. I was lucky I grew up in the 70s when there was no gender identity to confuse me. I hope children are listening and watching a mom who is here because she loves her daughter and wants to safeguard children. It's not hateful to want to protect children, to talk about the real facts and the real reality of schools grooming our kids to believe that they can opt out of their sex. Students' true selves are not made authentic by social secret transition behind parents' backs. We lack the understanding in this community among the leaders and the adults that support a gender-affirming model only. I am being kind by telling the truth. Children are listening, and I want them to know that they've been lied to. There's no such thing as a trans child. You're beautiful just the way you are. You were born in the right body, and it's okay to be gay. Every time someone speaks at this podium with an ideologue dogma supporting the ultimate gay conversion called transgenderism, it's not progressive, it's pseudoscience. My lesbian and gay bisexual friends do not fight for an ideology. Trans is not the new gay. Identity and sexual orientation are not the same. I want our community to think about the consequences of irreversible damage a path of social transition leads to.
Lydia,
the sterilization of generation of children is not kind. Our
Lydia,
sex bodies are real whether you like it or not. Words hurt, but
quiet.
No one is born in the wrong body.
And so we welcome Lydia McLaughlin to the show. Welcome, Lydia. So great to speak with you.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me.
I can't imagine how how difficult this was. So you homeschooled your daughter from grades what? How did that start?
Preschool to ninth grade.
Why?
I started homeschooling my son first. He was bullied in first grade, and the school wouldn't do anything to stop it. So I made a big decision and started homeschooling him in second grade. And for her, I thought I would never put either one of them in the public school system.
So why did you put her into ninth grade? Was it for the high school experience?
Yes, because oftentimes when kids get to the high school age, it's very typical for homeschoolers to want to go to high school and have the high school experience. They often tell us as homeschoolers, how are you going to socialize your kids? Which actually, if you're a homeschooler, our kids are way over socialized, and you actually have to make time to do your learning. We are really out in the world. So, the pandemic happened. My son decided he wanted to go to school. She originally wanted to go to performing arts school. She was a ballerina, but then decided she didn't want to do that. So she wanted to do art. So the school's got a great program where they do college and high school at the same time. I was going to have them start to do college. A lot of times homeschoolers in high school start to do college at the age of 14. There's a lot of community colleges that will let them go. So I said, why don't we put you in this school? And that's why I put her in that school.
And so she was really the one that was kind of leading that because she felt like she'd been missing out on things. And I know other homeschoolers who have that experience. In other words, the kids, they feel like somehow because they're special and they're singled out as homeschoolers, that somehow they're missing out on the public school experience. I want to encourage parents just right now. You need to galvanize your children with the truth and make them basically too proud to want to succumb to the peer pressure of attending school. That idea that they're missing something. They're not missing anything. They're missing the hardship that comes with it, because the story that you're about to hear is that story. And it's sad to me that somehow the culture gets to these kids, which it does. It can't help it. If you let your kids watch movies, all the kids go to school. We've so enculturated this idea of school that all these kids are basically falling prey to an ideology of you can't belong unless you go to school. You won't get by unless you go to school. You're missing out on the fun stuff because school is so fun. Unless you attend school. And so, and honestly, there's no blame here. I totally get it. Your daughter wanted to go to school. You thought you were serving her. You homeschooled her through ninth grade. So in theory, she's got a good foundation. She should be fine. And then she got to school. And how quickly did you notice things? And what exactly did you notice? What tipped you off?
Well, I noticed some things as the beginning of the school, how she was dressing. She would ask me certain things, even before school started, do you think people can tell if I'm a boy or a girl? And I would think, well, that's a silly question. And the first day she said somebody came up to her and asked her what her pronouns were. And I'm like, okay, well, what did you say? And she's like, well, anything. And so I didn't really think anything about it. So about 2 weeks in, being a nice mom with a messy teenager, I thought I'd clean her room. And in the room, I found what I thought were going to be her art journals, because she's an artist. A journal where she was writing that she wanted to pick a name. She wanted to come out as trans. She wanted a double mastectomy. She wanted testosterone. She was cutting. She had suicide ideation. So in that moment, I freaked out, right?
I'm sorry, this is within 3 weeks of starting school?
3 weeks of starting school, but she had been keeping the journal prior, so I didn't see it until school started.
So they got to her on social media first.
Yes. I believe she got influenced on social media, and then unfortunately by other homeschoolers. I had put her in a homeschool class at age 11. A lot of homeschoolers aren't like me, where they homeschool from the beginning and and they've never been in public school. A lot of people will pull their kids out of public education. And because of the public education, these kids have already been indoctrinated. So she was
By the way, I have that experience. So I can attest to that. So
Right.
just because you homeschool doesn't mean you're at all safe from, the world, let's say, because the world enters the homeschool environment very, very easily, very easily. So she had already been compromised.
Yes, because the kids in the theater program were talking about gender identity and sexual orientation. At 11, she got into my car and declared she was queer, but she was still sitting in the back seat. So I'm like, we have time to think about that. You're too little to be, contemplating that, your sexual orientation right now. And there was a friend that I didn't really realize that probably had a lot of influence on her until things started to come out later.
Wow. So at that very young age, people were already feeding into her ideas about gender and sexuality, which really, those are the innocent years. They really should remain innocent. Okay, so there were, in theory, there were like warning signs when you go back and you go, oh, that did happen, and I didn't think much of it. But of course, we all have those moments where we just didn't think much of it, and it makes perfect sense not to think much of it until later when you go, dang, that should have been a warning sign. So
exactly. And as homeschoolers, we have the opportunity to pull our kids out of the environment. That's the best thing. So I pulled her out of the environment and I cut off most of the relationships that were feeding her this stuff. I just
at 11.
At 11.
Oh, so you took action.
I did.
Okay, so because you made it sound like she's in the back seat and I've got time, but you actually took action. You're like, you know what? There's some bad stuff that's coming out of that particular experience for her. We're going to stop that. You took her out.
That's the power of homeschooling, is that you get to have the power to like, okay, well, this environment's not good. I can pull her out. There's no bureaucracy that we have to deal with.
Right. Done with that.
Right.
Moving on. But then let me ask you, do you suppose that her push to attend high school was at least in part informed by this idea that maybe she could reach out and find more outlets like that?
I don't really know. Maybe I think really she's, as a homeschooler, sometimes our kids, even though they're around a lot of other kids, they have a weird like loneliness. I don't know if any other homeschool, and they feel like they're kind of alone, and they really crave this large group of friends. And even though we had friends, unfortunately, some of her friends were very hypersexualized, and my kid was like loved being a kid. Like she would be like, I don't understand why these girls want to, follow my brother around or just talk about sexual stuff. She just was like, I don't really understand. I really love being a kid.
Well, I think parents, here's another opportunity for me to just speak to that for a minute. Parents have to understand that children are different. Some children crave a lot of social interaction and some don't. And some are just in the middle. And so a little is enough. And others are like, nope, I need a lot more than that. And of course, it's the parent's job to try to figure out, okay, how can we best navigate this? But at the same time, as the parent, you have the opportunity to be the gatekeeper of who is allowed access to a certain degree. Like if you send your child to youth group, your child's going to meet a whole bunch of different people. If you send your child to theater camp, your child's going to meet a whole bunch of different people. But it's who the child decides to bring home that you have your gatekeeper over. And so, okay, so back to her, she probably did. She's probably like an extreme extrovert. She just wanted a lot of different experiences with a lot of different people. But within 3 weeks of ninth grade, and you discovering it in secret. So we have to dive into that a little bit. So you discovered it in secret. Did you just confront her with the news, or
no?
Or you were trying to be a little bit more?
Yeah, I knew I needed to do a deep dive. And so I, Googled, my kid thinks they're trans. And pretty much it was all affirming, like PFLAG and Trevor Project, and anything you looked up, it was like you should unconditionally love your child and accept their new gender identity. And I just kept going and going. And then I went on DuckDuckGo. And then I started to be able to find sites like this one site called Fourth Wave Now, which led me to some articles written by, one was a radical lesbian talking about all of the gender stuff. And then it took me to parents of ROGD kids. And so when I started reading these stories, I'm like, oh, okay, well, basically just insert my child's name and you've got a blueprint for this kid.
So back up for a minute. An extreme lesbian who is advocating for what?
She was talking about the horrors of the gender and how the gender identity came for the lesbian community first, and like, you know.
Okay, so she's a trans. She's sort of anti-trans,
which we would call a TERF.
Right, she's a TERF, exactly. But then you used a term ROGD, and I'm sorry,
Yes.
not familiar.
So ROGD was coined by a researcher. Her name is Lisa Littman. She started noticing clusters of girls identifying with a trans identity. And so her curious mind started kind of researching this phenomena, and she coined rapid onset gender dysphoria.
Yep, I figured that out right before you said, yeah, rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is in clusters, especially in young women. And it's also informed by the idea that when you put a young girl who is insecure and not assertive and feels very much like the weight of the world is on her shoulders, very intimidated by growing, maturing with body parts and all of that, when you give her testosterone, all of a sudden she's at large and in charge. And so of course there's a euphoria that sets in with this young woman. And of course she's going to tell all her friends, this is the best thing ever. Get on the hormone, get on the testosterone. Just makes all the problems go away because it gives them this sense of empowerment that's a false sense of empowerment, but because it's testosterone, right?
Exactly.
And so it's very dangerous. And so you discovered, oh, there are people out there who are not on board with transitioning my daughter, who actually can speak to the negative effects of allowing her to bring this into her life. And so then what did you do? I mean, I just find this fascinating. And I want to ask you, like, at what point did you sit down and just cry? Like, was there that element of this?
I cried the day that I found the journals. They were very, very disturbing. The pictures that she was drawing of herself. I mean, it really was crushing.
Also, your daughter's in pain, and you're understanding that she's going through all of this alone, basically.
Yes. And you know, they often bring up the activists love to use the word suicide. These kids are more suicidal. You know, it's because they get so focused on the body of hating themselves. So that's, and my point is that the kid that doesn't talk about it, that doesn't threaten it, that's only writing it in a journal and keeping it close to themselves and secret, those are the kids that you really need to worry about.
Oh, absolutely. But I will point out, if in case people don't know this, because it seems like a lot of people don't know this, Johns Hopkins did gender transforming surgeries for several years, and they followed with a study. And their study determined that the people who did the surgeries to remove genitalia or add genitalia or what have you were by and large satisfied with the outcomes of the surgeries, which means that the surgeries were, in their terms, successful. However, the suicidality of the individuals remained the same, meaning they had the same suicide rate if they didn't do the surgery as if they did. And so Johns Hopkins University suspended their entire program and closed it down because it's first do no harm. And so if your treatment is not actually accomplishing the fulfillment of bettering the person's life, which it wasn't, then you can't be, they still had a shred of integrity. And so they shut it down. And so your daughter, so you must have been very afraid because she was only writing about it, wasn't talking about it.
Right.
How did you approach this topic with her?
I sat her down about 3 weeks in of doing my research, and
Okay, so sorry, 6 weeks into the school year.
Mhm.
Is she
Yeah.
still attending school?
She's still attending school.
Right, because if you pulled her out, that would be like a red flag. Why are you taking me out?
Mhm.
So she's
Right.
still attending school. You're walking on eggshells, but you're doing your research while she's out of the house kind of thing.
Right.
Okay. 6
Yeah.
weeks into the school year.
Yeah, I sit her down. I told her that I found her journals and that, I got the language. And I said, I'm not affirming you, that I love you, and that I would like you to go by your birth name for the next 4 years while you're in this school. Um, I was an older mom when I got pregnant with her. So they deemed me, the geriatric mom, and I got an amniocentesis. And I said, because of that, I have the proof that every single cell in your body is female. You cannot change it. You can't opt out on your sex.
And what did she say?
My kid just at that point wasn't pushing back. She does a lot of taking it in, and she said, "Okay," but this is where we know that I did public records request, so I know that from August to about December, she was going by her name, and then after December, they started the secret. She discovered that she can change her name and get the adults to call her.
Oh, so she agreed to go along with your thing, but then she went behind your back because they offered it to her.
Exactly. She
Yeah.
did what teenagers do.
Wow.
They rebel, and this is the subculture. They can rebel against the parent, and I can get the adults to do what I want if I can't get my mom to do it.
Well, and incidentally, the school actually, I haven't said this before, and this is fascinating to me because it didn't really occur to me. The school forms a wedge between the child and the parent. And so the school necessarily sort of engenders the opportunity for rebellion between the child and the parent. It just sort of puts that out on the table. Like, because the school is an alternative authority, you could always question your parents' authority because we are actually the authority.
Right.
And so I've always said, basically, teenagers who aren't exposed to that are less likely to rebel against their parents because there isn't that other authority. But however, the schools now actually encourage the child. We will help you rebel against your parents. We will hide your secrets from your parents. We promise not to tell. And they encourage it by giving every child this form. What are your pronouns? Do you want your parents not to know? And so that's what the school did to you.
Exactly.
So
What do you call it? Triangulation, right? So in the past, there used to be the triangle of the parent, teacher, and child. Now they've cut the parent out, and it's just the teacher and the child or the administration. And like you said, um, so I can either go to when I found out that the school was doing it, or also kind of put in there to jump on what you just said. So, we'll go back to the discovery. In that moment in ninth grade, the principal pulled her into her office and did exactly what you just said. She told her that she was mandated. We have a law here in California called AB 1266, by law, to not tell her parents because she had heard that she was going by another name, and that the
right.
teachers were told that they couldn't go by another name. And for me personally, there's like a teacher training of the patterns of grooming. This is like a part of grooming 101.
Good for you. Okay. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to pick up there and find out your reaction when you found out that this was happening.
Okay.
Patterns of grooming is such a great way of saying that. This is the Sam Sorbo Show. Quick break here. When we come back with my guest, we're going to cover the rest of this tremendous story. Hopefully give some hope to you guys out there who might be also going through this, or parents who may suspect that they have this in front of them. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thanks for tuning into the Sam Sorbo Show. We are in a battle for our very nation, a nation that was founded on Christian principles and on the Bible. The 10 Commandments is the basis for our rule of law. But these days, when you go talk to people on the street, you'll find that most of them don't even know what rule of law means. And that's why I'm so proud to have Herzog Foundation as a sponsor of my show. I also love what they do because they seek for the benefit of Christian education throughout the nation. So Herzog Foundation is a wonderful partner for us here at the Sam Sorbo Show. Thanks for watching. One of my favorite products that I've recommended to a number of people is Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil. Quiet brain is what I need when I'm trying to go to sleep. What's great about Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil, it's a unique proprietary blend of essential oils, very pure and therapeutic grade essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, lavender, and sandalwood. And I love it. It helps me sleep at night. And most importantly, it's very easy to travel with. That first night in a hotel for me is always a little bit dicey. Am I going to sleep well? And with Neuromatic's Quiet Brain Oil, really helps me. So I highly recommend it. You can get it at sorbostudios.com, and we'll see you there. All right, welcome back to the Sam Sorbo Show. My guest once again is Lydia McLaughlin, who has stepped through the gender transforming of her own daughter in her public high school after homeschooling her through ninth grade, which is what is so, I mean, I'm still astonished. And yet I know that not every homeschooler has my experience with my kids, right? Like, basically sheltered. And frankly, my kids were not even that sheltered. And so this should come as no surprise, but still it does because of the egregious actions of the schools that I've heard over and over again. And so your daughter, to recap, she was already thinking about gender and where she fit on a spectrum, et cetera, when she entered high school in ninth grade, when she entered the public school arena in ninth grade. It took her 3 weeks, or it took you 3 weeks to actually find it in her journal. It took 6 weeks. So we're in mid-October when you discover that, and you get her to agree to not transition, basically to lay off of this. And I guess you basically said, give yourself 4 years and don't make any commitment.
Mhm.
And let's see where all of this shakes out, because things are still changing and things are moving, and there's no reason for her to make a declaration or do anything permanent. And yet the school then intervened and said, but we're here to support you in your gender affirmation journey. And so we'll secretly call you by your other name and call you the pronouns, which I've never understood, because the pronouns are third person pronouns. So they can't call her by those pronouns. So it's just the way they refer to her behind her back, which ought to make her less comfortable, not more.
Right. And
But I guess anyway.
yeah, I'll geek out for a minute. As a homeschooler, we're super like grammar was my thing, right?
Right.
And when the whole pronoun thing came, and I was like, what? That doesn't make sense.
Thank you for affirming me in my pronoun OCD.
Mhm.
But the school, so the principal literally called your daughter into the office and said, we're going to set this up so that your mom never finds out. It's you and me against the world.
Yes.
It is grooming. That
Yes.
is what grooming is.
Right. Keeping secrets from parents.
Let me ask you this.
Mhm.
Do you think there was, I mean, aside from watching a child self-destruct, which is what this is, right? Aside from that, do you think there was another ulterior sort of motive
For the
for the
school,
principal to literally go out of her way to call this girl in and have this meeting?
people like her they really buy in to the lie. It's almost
Yeah.
what we call virtue signaling.
No, yeah, it's an ideology, and so she feels like she's actually doing the right thing by subverting the will of the parent.
Exactly. Your parent must be just so terrible that, that you can't do this at home and you're doing it here. And aren't we so great? And they've been trained. The Human Rights Campaign came in and trained this district of how to basically keep secrets from parents and how they interpret the law of AB 1266.
So you now have a PhD in something that you never really wanted to study.
I said that yesterday. I've got my doctorate in gender identity. And
But the end of the story is positive.
it's yes.
So
Yes,
take
I'm
us,
so
you've got, we've got a little bit of time, but take us there as you
Uh,
will.
yeah, so we'll get to like I discovered her being transitioned at the end of the school year. A biology teacher put her name on a on a what do you call it? A showcase piece that they were doing. I questioned him. He said that they can go by a nickname. I questioned her. She said she denied it. And so I said, well, if she didn't put it there, then who did? And he said he can go in as an administrator and take it off and put her name back. So in the summer, I found that her friends were calling her this name. So in 10th grade, I asked for a meeting with the principal to sit down and ask them to stop calling her the male name and the pronoun. She denied me a meeting using AB 1266 and said, sorry, because of this law, we can't meet with you. I bid my time. I would treat her like almost like a drug addict, because it kind of becomes a drug addiction. Like the first hit is the name and the pronoun, right? And that's like what we call the gateway drug for these kids with the gender identity stuff. And then I found a third ID that somebody so conveniently made for her, because the school has a college ID and a school ID that she has to go by. So they made an ID with another name on it. I discovered that she was going to the GSA club. An older student was also grooming her by getting her a binder and breast tape.
What's
Mid-year,
the GSA club? Sorry.
GSA is what it used to be, the Gay Straight Alliance. It had like a good idea back in when it started in the 90s to get gay kids and straight kids to just kind of like get along. Now they call it the Gender Sexuality Alliance.
Oh boy.
So in there, they're doing, they're showing like in her yearbook, there's a picture of her with a screenshot of them talking about aromantic and asexual. So it really is sexualizing, or it's a sexualizing club. That's all it is, really. It's like
It's a sex club.
it's a
Okay.
sex club on our schools. So they denied. I asked for another meeting mid-year, 10th grade. They denied me again. And that's one of the reels that you'll show that I had to go to the school district with 2 minutes. I got help from a parent advocate. And I asked, like, how does a parent get a meeting with their principal that keeps denying them a meeting? And then a wonderful school board member gave me his card. He got me a couple minutes with the president of Pacific Justice Institute, and he scared me, because in the state of California, if you don't affirm your child, it's emotional abuse, and CPS can remove them from your home. I know this because I'm actually witnessing it happening right now to some parents. And so that day, my husband and I said, this principal's dropped anchor. We're not going to take this meeting. And
Wait.
hmm,
Sorry, I think I got confused. So the school board member, who was a good person, he was a good guy.
mhm,
He gave you his card and he said, you need to talk to PJI,
yes,
Pacific Justice Institute. And I know Brad very well. And Brad, or whoever you were talking to there,
Brad,
said, you need to be very careful, because if you don't affirm the gender, CPS can come and take your child. At
correct.
which point, the meeting that you had actually been able to arrange,
Mhm.
you said, we're not going to take that meeting because that's a trap.
Yeah, we felt that it was a trap because also we found out that the assistant superintendent planned to be there, but they weren't telling us.
Right.
So,
Right. They had a witness. They had it all set to take your child away from you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
really felt like they could. So we're just
Right.
like, no, thank you. We're just going to focus on, helping her through this issue. And then I continued to look for help. I found a wonderful person from organization. I always forget the name of it, but it's called FAIR. And they helped me put together my first public records request. I didn't really know what I was doing. They denied me my records by using FERPA, which is the Federal Education Rights Parents Act, that gives us a right to investigate our child's records. So they used that, and they also used the law again, underlining and saying, like, we can't see you because of AB 1266. So I got connected with a lawyer with Pacific Justice Institute that read the law, and the law does not say that a child can demand to be called by another name. and the school does not have the legal right to conceal and deceive. And as soon as they got that opinion in that letter, things started to shift.
So you actually used the law
Yes.
to bring them to heel.
Yes.
And how did it resolve?
I got her to sign an agreement that her parents knew best. And we had multiple meetings with the school district.
Sorry, you got your daughter to sign an agreement
Yes.
that
Because
put you back, that made you attorney, basically, power of attorney in a sense.
yes, because in the state of California, at the age of 12, our children can go see a doctor, go get an abortion, go get,
Right.
at 14, you can go get testosterone at Planned Parenthood. Like, it puts so much power, because within my public records request, I saw my daughter go, oh, hey, yeah, you're going to get this email from my mom and from me saying, like, call me by my birth name. Go ahead and do that on all my schoolwork, but call me this other name at school. So she was just colluding and trapped within this space with these people. Like, it just gives our kids so much power. I
And by
want
the way, to point out to people, the people who are doing this in the system, they know how to game the system. So they will give the daughter the words, sweetie, you have to send me an email and just say, my mother insists that this and that, but do this and that. Like, they will give her the words that they need to hear or see on paper so that they can justify it under the laws that they have. But this very clever person who you see on your screen discovered that there are other aspects of the law that will scare these people into behaving better. How again did you scare them into behaving better?
well, the day that we had our final meeting, because I had an agreement with her, because I had taken her out of the country for like almost a month. Because the main thing too, I want to hit home with parents, is that you need to stay connected, like really connected with your kid, because they're love bombing her. You're a child, you got to love bomb them more. So in the meeting, the former superintendent was very much like a politician. He really loved to twist my words and gaslight me. And they kept saying, like,
To be clear, he's a former superintendent now, but at the time he was the superintendent?
yes, he's gone.
Okay.
He's moved to another district.
Right.
I'm sorry. Sorry for that district.
Yeah.
So he kept saying, if she comes in tomorrow and asks to be called this name, what are we going to do? And in that moment, I had just had enough, because they wouldn't let me ask because I finally had the principal in the room, and I finally had a moment to say, okay, walk me through. Who advised you? Did you really do it on your own to deny me a meeting? Walk me through when you pull my daughter into your office. And he just jumped on me and would not let her answer that question. And he goes, well, what are we going to do? And I said, I will sue you and you and you, like everybody in this room, I'll sue him. And my husband was like, I did not know that you were going to get froggy, because I was actually a lot more like, I had enough. And his eyes got widened. And then about 2 weeks later, I got a letter from their attorneys that they were going to comply. But it was still had to do my work, Sam. I still had to go, okay, well, have you notified the teachers? And I would have to send a letter to the teachers. And then the teachers would just bump back the same thing. Yes, we got your email. Yes, we will, whatever the wording was, that yes, we will honor that. And that's because they were being advised by the president of the teachers union how to talk to me. And then also by the attorneys how to talk to me. It was basically just one blanket statement. And so that's how I got them to comply.
It's basically, they have set up a morass of kind of like red tape, rainbow tape.
Yes.
It's rainbow tape. And in order to get through it, you need to piecemeal everything out, attack each little thing, and then attack the whole. And it sounds like that's what you did. So you dealt with each of the teachers. You tried to deal with the principal. You realized that the superintendent was running interference for the principal, basically, and they were hiding behind this law. But there were other laws that they couldn't escape from.
Right.
And you had to do your homework. I respect the fact that you wanted to make it clear that it wasn't like you just walked in there and said, I'm suing you.
Oh, no.
You needed to know what the lawsuit was going to be, and you did. And there was a lawsuit because there has to be. What they did was unconscionable.
Right.
The other thing that I want to point out, because I really want people to be able to take away from this and use it, is you took your daughter out of that entire environment. I don't know where you went for a month. Sounds like fun.
Europe. We went to Europe.
Works for me.
I used to be an actress, and I did a production a million years ago with a Fear and Misery in the Third Reich with some Frenchies. And so we're still friends. And so I'm like, we're going to go meet my French friends, and then we're going to go to England, and we're going to go to Jane Austen's house. And it's just you and I, and, doing our thing, and being out of our environment, like showing her, like, there's a whole world out there outside of her body.
Was she on to you? Was she's like, Mom?
No, because when she was 7, because she was a ballerina, she loved fashion. If people know who Betsy Johnson is, I always used to say she's like, someday might be a Betsy Johnson with her crazy outfits.
Right.
She wanted to go to Paris, and I said, I'll take you when you're 16. So I wanted to make sure that she knows that mom is the one that keeps the promises. So I kept a promise to a little girl.
That gets me emotional. When did you have that idea? How did it hit you? Because that must have been like, oh my gosh, I could totally do this.
When the whole thing started, Sam, I knew I needed to keep really like some sort of connection, because the trans cult really needs to destroy the relationship with the mother. And yes, the dad, but the mother is really the one that they need to destroy it, because if they can destroy the mother and child bond, then they have your kid really like a cult. So I knew I needed to keep my connection. Like I tell people, I spent 190 hours watching every single Riverdale episode. Okay. It's like the most trashy teen series, but I'm like, I don't care. I get an hour every week with my daughter to watch this show. It's just her and I. And then we developed our own like language, like, don't question it, it's Riverdale. They're always jumping the shark. So
I have to point out, because this is one of the things that I sort of harp on with parents.
Mhm.
You have to find those points of connection.
Mhm.
And if it's not something that's interesting to you, buck up.
That's right.
Just pony up to the bar and put your ante in, because this is what your child needs. Whatever your child is interested in, that's your new interest, and you make that your interest. And and you have to be careful. And I'm sure you were very careful, because it's easy to deride it.
Mhm.
This is such a silly show. Why is she behaving that way? That's so dumb. It's easy to sort of go into the critical as the adult, thinking that somehow that's getting you points. Doesn't get you points. Just enjoy it like your child enjoys it, and then have the conversation afterwards and have some fun with it. But recognize that if that's the fascination that your child has, and it could be anything, it could be Legos. Okay. I don't care what it is. Feed into that, because that's your connection point. And your kid's not going to go, Mommy, can we do bookkeeping? Because I know you love to do the book. Like, that's not going to happen. You've got to meet them where they are. They're not going to come to where you are, because you're the adult.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's just amazing.
Absolutely. Like as soon as because we didn't do the COVID shot, but we had to do like the PCR or whatever test. As soon as they opened it up to go to concerts, we were in, and we were taking that test, and we were getting our paper, and people were like, "Oh, I can't go." I'm like, "I don't care, we're going." And so that was another in. Like I've taken her to over 13 concerts.
Right. You just find those points of connection. How is she today? How old is she today, and how is she today?
She's 17. She's thriving. Like, again, my story is a success story. She's thriving. She's getting straight A's. 9th grade, she was failing, had to do summer school. She's going into her college of choice as a sophomore, because she has so many college credits. So, and she's just completely comfortable with her body now. Once
She
I
just
got
stepped through the whole thing.
I'm sorry.
Do you encourage your husband to affirm? How do I put this? I hate using the word, but affirm her as a woman, as a young lady, because young women need strong father figures in order to form strong relationships with men that are proper and solid. And so do you and your husband have that conversation at all?
We never had that conversation. We just kind of did it naturally. Like, so in ninth grade, she was really struggling with anxiety and wouldn't get out of the car with me. So we're like, let's switch it up. You're gonna go with dad. Dad took her for a good almost 2-3 years every morning. So they had that time to be with, dad and daughter, talk about music. And he always would tell her what a beautiful girl she is. So yeah, he just naturally knew how to, like, this is his daughter, this is his baby girl. So
necessary. Well, let's see. I have 3 questions that I typically ask, and we're running right on time. So the first question is, what is your education background, and do you use it today?
I have a culinary background, and then I have a theater background. So I don't know, maybe I do with organization and being able to just kind of be lighthearted in things. So maybe I use it that way.
Okay. What advice would you give your younger self? You can pick any time.
The advice I'd give my younger self: you're stronger than you know.
Ooh, at what age would you tell yourself that?
I would have told myself that at around 21 or 22.
Yeah, interesting. When you're just coming into your own, but you don't feel it, right?
Really strong introvert.
What is the most urgent cultural shift that you think needs to happen today?
For me, because this is my life, the urgent cultural shift is for everyone to understand that parents like myself that don't affirm their child are not the villains, they're not the demons. And the cultural shift, we need to stop gender affirming care, what they call it, which actually is gender mutilation of our children.
Yeah.
That it's not kind to affirm a child that they're born wrong.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Wow, this was quite edifying. I want to thank you so much for coming on. Lydia McLaughlin, do you have resources that you want to send people to, or do you want to offer a way of contacting you or anything like that?
Let's see. I have my X handle. I can pull that up real quick, or you can.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
So if people want to reach out, they can PM you on DM. I guess
Yeah,
DM.
DM me on X. Yes, because I've moved into a parent advocate role. I'm a support parent for other parents.
Right. God bless you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Sam.
All right, so that's it for the Sam Sorbo Show. We'll be back next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, speak truth and speak it boldly, just like my last guest did.
The views and opinions expressed in the Sam Sorbo Show are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and positions of the Herzog Foundation.